everybody, it's Leslie from Heffy Doodle, and today I'm going to be showing you an instructional video on how to assemble our mini double slider die. This is a really fun way to add slider elements to your cards, and you can use it in many different ways to slide something up, to slide something down, either off to the side. You can also extend the panels, you can have pop-up words, so many options. Let's take a look.
So first of all, here is a card that I have used the mini double slider dies to create two sliding panels. First of all, a panel at the top where I have a squirrel which will pop out of the tree canopy. And then I also have one at the bottom, a pull-out tab at the bottom, which recreates a little peekaboo squirrel coming out of the hole on our tree. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to actually assemble the slider mechanism, and then towards the end of this video, I'll also be showing you some different ways to adjust the die so that you can get more use out of it. In another video, we'll show you how to assemble the card. So the first thing you're going to notice about this die set is that there's actually 5 dies in the packet, and the 2 larger dies are actually for creating the sliding mechanism, and then the 3 smaller ones are used to create a notch on the front of your card, as well as adding a little semicircle to the pull-out panel so that it can create a finished card. We're going to start by cutting out some cardstock using the 2 larger dies. There is one die that looks a little bit like a capital I, or if you turn on its side, a H. This is what I'm going to call the mechanism die, and the other one, which is a rectangle with some rounded edges, I'm going to call that the panel die. Now we're going to need 1 of that mechanism die and then 2 of the panel dies to help us build our complete double slider mechanism. When the actual die is all assembled, the panel will actually sit between these 2 extruding notches on that capital I, and 1 panel will go on the front and 1 panel will go on the back, pointing in the opposite direction. And right in the middle we will have a loop of plastic to enable these panels to slide. As one slides out to the left, the other will slide out to the right, so they will move together in unison. Now, to create the actual plastic loop in the middle, I like to use plastic from a doggy poo bag. You can use plastic packaging or a sandwich bag, something like that, but I like to use these because I find that they're a good thickness, they hold the shape well, and they're also really easy to trim down in your trimmer. Now we need to create a loop which is the width of this middle section of our mechanism die, not including the lugs that's sticking out. And I have measured this, and roughly it's about 32 millimeters. So I'm going to put my poo bag, while it's all folded up, into my trimmer. I'll put my blade down in the middle of my strip of plastic because the blade finds it kind of hard to catch on the end. So I find I get a nicer, cleaner cut if I pop it down right in the middle and then slide down and slide up. And I'm cutting this whole bag into strips, which is about 32 millimeters in width. I have gone ahead and cut up the whole bag, and I'm going to keep these in my storage pocket alongside my dies so that I have these for any future double slider projects I want to do. So I'm just going to take one of these and open it out, and then I'll take a pair of scissors and cut along the middle section and also trim off the edges. So each one of these strips we have pre-cut will actually give us 4 strips for your double slider die. So you'll get a lot of mileage out of one bag. To actually assemble the mechanism, it's really easy. Simply take some thin double-sided sticky tape and adhere that along the short end of your strip of plastic. Next, you're going to wrap this around the inside section of your mechanism die cut, and you want to adhere it together to create a loop, but the important thing here is that it is not too tight. I like to wrap it around tightly and then move my fingers down to create a little bit of gap at the bottom edge of that internal section, so that when it is all stuck together, the loop will actually move freely. And now all we need to do is trim away the excess using our scissors. The good news is that the hard bit is done. Next, we're going to adhere our panels onto the mechanism by adding a thin strip of double-sided sticky tape along the short edge of this die cut panel. I'm going to stick this onto both of these panels, and in order to stick this down onto our mechanism, we first need to make sure that the loop of plastic is sitting exactly where we want it to be. So use your fingers to move around this loop of plastic and make sure that the double-sided sticky tape section is at the very top of the loop. It's slid as far top as it possibly will go. Next, we're going to take our panel and use that as a guide to stick on this panel right on top. So the sticky tape on the panel will go right on top of where the sticky tape is already positioned on the plastic. When you pull down on this panel, it will now slide the loop along the mechanism die cut. Now to adhere the second panel, we're going to flip over the mechanism in the closed position and adhere this down in the opposite direction. We're going to use this double-sided sticky edge and position it at the bottom down here. Make sure that your mechanism is in the closed position before sticking this down. When both of the panels are in place, what you will find is when you pull one of them, the plastic loop will actually move and the other panel will automatically move out. So now you've created your double slider mechanism, all we need to do now is adhere it to the card. So these sections on the side is what we're going to use to adhere this mechanism onto your card. Now you can use double-sided sticky tape like this. However, we've designed these to be wide enough so that you can use it with the Heffy Doodle 5mm wide foam tape, or you can also use the Heffy Doodle double-sided foam strips, which are the perfect thickness for making sure that this mechanism will work perfectly on your cards. But before we actually stick it onto the card, we were going to need to create a little thumb groove or a notch on the front of your card so that your thumb can easily grab the slider mechanism. And to do this, we're going to use this die from the set. Simply figure out where you want your notch to be placed. Take this die and move it up slowly so the top horizontal line of this die will merely touch the bottom edge of your cardstock. The semicircular piece of the die will overhang on top of the card, and that is what will cut out this semicircular notch or groove for your thumb. You can even use this same die to create a notch in your card base to make it even easier to grasp that pull-out panel. And once you have your notch already cut, simply add the double slider mechanism panel behind your notch. This is always the fun bit, actually testing the mechanism while it's in place. I think it's so fun to watch how that panel can pop out. Now down here in the thumb groove, you can of course add this little semicircle that was die cut from the front panel. But also in the die set, there are two other semicircular dies that you can use to die cut little panels to go on this thumb notch. And one of these dies actually has an adorable little arrow on it, which makes it really fun and obvious for the recipient to know that this is the panel they need to pull out. Now I want to show you how to get even more out of this die, because what you can do is actually extend one of these panels in order to create movement further up your card. First of all, lay your panel die onto a piece of cardstock, and I like to adhere it down with a piece of Heffy memo tape, but I leave the bottom edge of the die exposed. I use this as a guide to then do some partial die cutting. I'll take my second plate and layer it on top, but I want to make sure that that bottom edge of the die is exposed. This means there will be no pressure along this bottom edge and it will not cut through the card here. Instead, you will have a flap, and then you can go ahead and extend that edge off the panel to create a longer panel. I like to use my trimmer for this. To assemble, you just do it exactly the same way as I mentioned before, using a thin strip of double-sided sticky tape along that bottom edge, and then you'll have a longer panel which will slide. This is perfect for things like creating the peekaboo squirrel in this card here. I have created a longer double-sided mechanism here, so when I pull down on it, the squirrel will be on this aperture in the tree. Another way you can adapt this die is by making a smaller movement. And to do that, we're going to adjust the mechanism section of your die. Die cut this once using your cardstock, then align it back up into the metal die itself. And we're going to slide it over to the side, making sure that the edges are aligned. We'll then run this through our die cutting machine to create a skinnier eye shape. And then assemble the die in exactly the same way as normal, but what you'll find is that there will be less movement. The panel will move out less. This is really useful if you want to add a pull-out panel to the side of your cards. You don't even have to use the panel. You could just stick a critter straight onto the plastic in the same way as you would with the panel to make it pop up. Or why not add a piece of acetate on there as well? That way you can have some moving elements that look like they're floating. So now you know how to assemble this die. There's so many ways you can use it. Make some critters pop out of some grass, pop out of an aperture, or maybe have a pop-up greeting or a sentiment. You could even have a pop-up gift card. There's so many ways to use this die, and I hope that you'll have fun exploring it and having fun playing with it just like we do.